Cruel husband humiliated his crippled wife in front of their maid. Later then this happened. Amanda Harris used to be the queen of her world, confident, sharp, loved by everyone who knew her. A former ballet teacher turned entrepreneur, she ran a local dance studio that had helped dozens of underprivileged girls find purpose through movement. But everything changed after the accident. One rainy morning, a delivery truck spun out on a slick road, crashing into Amanda's car. She survived, but just barely. When she finally opened her eyes 3 weeks later, the hospital room was sterile and silent. The doctor's voice was calm, but his words crushed her world. "Your spine was severely damaged. You'll need a wheelchair from now on." Her husband Leonard held her hand that day. He wept. He kissed her forehead and promised he wasn't going anywhere. But he lied. By the time Amanda returned home in her wheelchair, Leonard was no longer the man she married. Gone were the warm breakfasts and late-night talks. In their place came long silences, fake smiles, and the constant sound of his phone buzzing with someone else's attention. He stopped sleeping in the same bed, stopped asking how she felt. He started acting as if Amanda was a burden. When she needed help bathing, he called her lazy. When she asked him to adjust her pillows at night, he rolled his eyes. "You think you're the only one in pain?" he muttered one night, drunk and mean. Try living with a half-wife. That night, Amanda cried herself to sleep, not because of the wheelchair, but because of the man she once trusted. And then came Riley, the maid. Barely 20, with thick curly hair tied up under a faded bandana and a shy voice that barely rose above a whisper. She'd grown up in foster care, knew what pain looked like, and knew how to hide her own. The job listing had said housekeeping and errands, but she hadn't expected to walk into a home so beautiful and so broken. The mansion stood proud on the outside, all brick walls and glass windows. But inside, it felt like someone had left, the lights on in a haunted house. Cold, tense, empty. Leonard barely looked at Riley when she arrived. He just handed her a cleaning list and walked off, barking, "Stay out of the guest wing, and don't bother Amanda unless she calls for you." But Riley wasn't blind. She saw the bruises Amanda tried to hide, on her arms, on her heart. She heard the way Leonard spoke when he thought no one was listening. "I should have left you at the hospital," he hissed one morning. "You were prettier when you could walk." Amanda flinched, lips trembling. Riley stood frozen in the hallway, holding a tray of folded towels. For a moment, no one spoke, and then Leonard stormed past her, scoffing, "And you, what are you gawking at? You're just the help, remember that." He didn't know that Riley had seen worse, or that she had made a silent vow the moment she saw Amanda's eyes, that no woman would feel invisible in her presence. Riley Evans didn't come from much. Born in a forgotten town in southern Missouri, her earliest memories were of stained ceilings, screaming neighbors, and canned soup dinners. Her mother disappeared before she could even walk, and her father, when he wasn't locked up or passed out on the couch, barely remembered her name. By the time she was 8, Riley had been placed into her 4th foster home, and like all the others, it felt temporary, like borrowed space and borrowed kindness. She'd grown up fast, learned to clean, cook, stay quiet, and most importantly, stay invisible. Most kids her age were worried about prom and parties. Riley worried about making rent and whether she'd have a roof over her head the next month. She didn't have friends, but she had a job. And for someone like her, that was enough. So when the Harris household job offer came through the city agency, she jumped at it. Live-in maid, room and board covered. Work was intense, sure, but Riley had dealt with worse. What she didn't expect was how cold the mansion felt, like walking into a palace made of glass and ice. The air felt sharp, too clean, too quiet, like the silence was hiding something. The moment Riley first saw Amanda, it was on her second day. The woman was sitting alone in the sunroom, staring out the window as raindrops slid down the glass. Riley hadn't meant to interrupt. She'd just come to deliver folded linens. But Amanda turned her head slightly and offered the smallest, most fragile smile Riley had ever seen. "Thank you," she said. 2 words. Soft. Honest. That was all it took. From that day forward, Riley noticed everything. How Amanda's husband, Leonard, barely acknowledged her, unless it was to insult her in coded words or with passive-aggressive remarks. How he strutted around the house in his tailored shirts, barking orders at Riley like she was a broken appliance. How Amanda never complained, just nodded, smiled faintly, and retreated further into her silence. But Riley saw it, the pain, the loneliness, the subtle bruises that didn't come from walls or furniture. She saw a woman being erased in slow motion, and maybe it was because Riley had felt invisible her whole life too. But something in her shifted. She started showing up for Amanda in small ways. Hot tea on rainy mornings, placed just right on the side table before Amanda even asked. A knit blanket draped over Amanda's legs while she sat quietly in the garden. A soft knock on her door each night. No words, just presence. Just proof that someone still saw her. Leonard noticed the shift. He didn't like it. One morning, as Riley helped Amanda down the hallway, Leonard passed them without a word. But the look he gave Riley, dark, icy, territorial, sent a chill down her spine. "She's my wife," he said flatly later that day, cornering Riley in the kitchen. "Not your charity case." Riley didn't flinch. "Then treat her like one." He blinked, stunned. And for the first time in years, Leonard wasn't the most powerful person in his own house. Because Riley, young, quiet, lowly Riley, was no longer just the help. She was becoming the shield Amanda never had, and soon she'd become something even Leonard couldn't ignore. The house grew quieter, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that came before a storm, tense, charged, ready to snap. Leonard's tone shifted. He no longer barked commands, out loud. He whispered them now, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, a hand on Amanda's shoulder that lingered just too long, or a comment delivered low enough for Riley to catch, but just soft enough to deny. "You've made a friend," Leonard said one evening as Amanda passed him in the hallway. "Careful, darling. People like Riley always want something. Poor girls don't land in houses like this unless they're looking to steal something." Amanda said nothing, but she walked a little slower that day, looked a little more tired. Riley noticed tension was bleeding into every corner of the mansion. Riley started finding things out of place. Letters in Amanda's name, unopened and hidden behind books. Medical forms shredded and stuffed deep in the kitchen trash. One night, while cleaning Leonard's study, Riley found Amanda's insurance. Documents, unsigned. Her physical therapy appointments had been canceled without her knowing. The worst came on a cold Thursday morning. Riley walked into Amanda's room earlier than usual to check on her. She knocked softly, pushed open the door, and froze. Amanda was on the floor. She wasn't hurt, but she was trembling, her face pale and eyes wet with fresh tears. Her wheelchair was across the room, tipped over. Amanda looked up slowly, too ashamed to speak. "I asked him for help," she whispered, voice cracking. "He said, crawl if I cared that much." Riley felt something snap inside her. She helped Amanda up, gently, carefully, and said nothing. But her heart was racing. That night, after Amanda went to sleep, Riley started digging deeper. She logged into the home computer, the one Leonard guarded like it held nuclear codes. It didn't take long. Leonard wasn't as clever as he thought. Passwords were ego-based, his birth year, his initials, his favorite car. Within minutes, Riley uncovered emails, photos, and records. Leonard had been draining Amanda's accounts. Slowly, month by month, moving funds to shell companies he controlled. There were photos of him with another woman in Miami, receipts for dinners, hotels, spa trips. There were even voice memos, recorded arguments between him and Amanda. One, labeled Thursday Blow-Up, ended with the unmistakable sound of a slap. Riley sat there trembling, the screen glowing in the dark. He wasn't just cruel. He was strategic, calculated, dangerous. But now, he was exposed. The next day, Riley printed everything, kept copies hidden, showed Amanda only what she could handle, enough to see the truth, enough to spark something behind her eyes that had long been missing. "Do you believe me now?" Riley asked quietly. Amanda didn't answer at first. She stared at the papers, at the images of betrayal, the numbers that proved she was being erased. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Yes," she said, "and I'm not going to let him win." The game had changed. Amanda wasn't alone anymore, and Leonard had no idea what was coming. It happened on a Sunday, not a stormy one, not dramatic. The sun was shining, the garden was quiet, and Leonard, so confident, so untouchable, had just poured himself a neat scotch and gone out onto the terrace. Amanda, dressed in pale blue and wheeling herself slowly, followed shortly after. He didn't notice her at first. He was too busy on the phone. "She doesn't suspect a thing," he said, laughing. "The maid? Please. She's too stupid to tie. Her own shoes? Amanda's nearly a vegetable. I've got everything lined up. By the end of the month, the accounts will be cleared, and then it's the Dominican Republic, baby. You'll love the villa." Ocean view. Amanda didn't speak. Not yet. She just hit record on her phone and let it capture everything, his voice, his words, his laugh. It took only 2 minutes, but it was all there. He turned when he heard the wheels behind him. His smile dropped. Amanda sat at the edge of the patio, sunlight framing her face. Calm. Too calm. "Enjoying your drink?" she asked softly. He blinked. "You shouldn't be out here. Go back inside. You need rest." Amanda held up her phone. "I needed the truth more." There was a pause. A long, drawn-out silence where only the breeze stirred the leaves. "What are you talking about?" Leonard asked, but his voice had lost its steel. "I know about the accounts," Amanda said. "About the woman in Miami, about the recordings, the canceled therapy, the unsigned insurance papers. I know everything, Leonard. And so does my lawyer." His face twitched, just once. Then he laughed, cold and tight. "You think anyone's going to believe the word of a cripple and a maid? Amanda, please!" But Amanda didn't answer. Riley stepped out next. She held a folder in her hands. A thick one. Receipts, screenshots, transcripts, a copy of Amanda's medical files. Even an email Leonard had forgotten to delete. One where he told his girlfriend to, "Just wait. The wife will be gone soon." Gone. That word rang louder than anything. "You drugged me," Amanda said, her voice low. "That's why I kept falling asleep. That's why I was always foggy. You wanted me out of the way, bit by bit." Leonard stepped forward, suddenly vicious. "You have no idea what you're talking about." But Riley moved faster. She snapped open the folder and tossed the contents onto the patio table. Pages fluttered, fell, like autumn leaves, like a verdict from above. Amanda's lawyer arrived not 10 minutes later. He had been briefed, prepared. Police followed close behind. Leonard never made it to the Dominican Republic. The cuffs went on with no struggle. But his mouth didn't. "Stop! You're nothing without me," he barked at Amanda. "You're still broken. You'll always be broken." But Amanda didn't flinch. She turned to Riley, her hands shaking, and whispered, "Can you wheel me inside?" And as Riley guided her gently back into the house, the sun glinting off the cuffs on Leonard's wrists, Amanda looked stronger than she ever had, because now she was free. 6 months later, the Benson home didn't look the same. The cold, marble floors, once silent and tense, now echoed with the sound of laughter, the scent of fresh flowers, and the warmth of sunlight that no longer felt like a lie. Amanda sat by the garden window each morning, a soft blanket over her legs, sipping tea with her physical therapist, one she personally selected, trusted, and paid fairly. Her face was fuller now, her eyes clearer. She had stopped wearing long sleeves to hide the bruises Leonard had left behind. There were no more bruises. The media had taken the story and run with it. Cruel husband arrested for drugging, crippled wife, and embezzling millions. Amanda had been humiliated for years behind mansion walls, but now she was being honored at charity galas for her courage. People didn't see a broken woman anymore. They saw a survivor who fought with silence, dignity, and one brilliant plan. Leonard's assets, frozen and redirected by court order, were turned over to Amanda. It wasn't revenge, it was justice. She reopened her art studio, a dream she'd buried in favor of Leonard's ambitions. Her paintings, once hidden in the attic, now hung in local galleries. One of them, still standing, won a state award for its raw portrayal of trauma and healing. Amanda didn't cry when she received the prize. She just smiled and whispered, "Thank you," as Riley stood in the crowd, beaming like a proud sister. Riley stayed on, not as a maid anymore, but as Amanda's assistant and closest friend. With Amanda's encouragement, Riley went back to school, studying nursing part-time while managing Amanda's care business startup, a nonprofit for domestic abuse survivors with disabilities. One afternoon, as the autumn leaves began to fall, again, Amanda wheeled herself out onto the same terrace where Leonard had sealed his fate. This time, she was the one holding a drink. Riley joined her, holding a folder. "The nonprofit's fully registered," she said, "and the first support group meets on Monday." Amanda nodded, emotion brimming just beneath the surface. "You saved my life, Riley." "No," Riley said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You saved your own. I just held the door open." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the sky change colors. There were no more threats, no more secrets, just freedom. And for the first time in years, Amanda Benson breathed without fear. The legacy Leonard tried to destroy had become a sanctuary for her, for Riley, and for every woman who had ever been told she was weak. She had been humiliated, crippled, abandoned. But now, she was reborn, and she would never be silent again. 2 years later, the name Amanda Benson meant something far different than it once did. Not just the former wife of a disgraced millionaire, not just the woman in the wheelchair who survived scandal and cruelty. She had become a symbol, quiet at first but undeniable. Across community centers, rehab clinics, and women's shelters, her nonprofit, The Second Step, was now a beacon for women rebuilding their lives from the ashes of betrayal. Riley sat beside Amanda on a small wooden stage in a modest hall in Pittsburgh. The air smelled like cinnamon and old wood. It was their 5th state on a speaking tour, but the nerves still danced behind Riley's smile. Dozens of women sat in folding chairs, some clutching each other's hands, some alone with their pain. Amanda took the microphone with both hands. Her voice was soft, but the room hushed as if someone had turned the world's volume knob down to 0. "I once thought silence was strength," she began, "that if I just endured long enough, it would all go away. I believed that if I didn't make noise, he'd stop hurting me. But silence doesn't protect you. It buries you." Some of the women in the room wiped tears without shame. "My husband took my legs," she continued. "But he didn't take my will. He couldn't take my mind, my kindness, or the quiet power I discovered in myself with time and with help." She glanced at Riley, who smiled tearfully and nodded. Amanda went on. "This wheelchair doesn't limit me. If anything, it carries me forward, toward truth, toward healing, and toward women like you who deserve safety, love, and the chance to begin again." After the applause faded, Amanda and Riley stayed, hugging each woman who approached them, offering words, comfort, and warm silence when words weren't enough. Back at their modest guest house that night, Amanda sat by the window in her robe, looking out at the dark trees. Riley handed her a cup of tea, then sat across from her on the rug. "You ever wonder," Riley asked, "what would have happened if I never took that maid job?" Amanda looked at her and smiled. "No, because I believe some doors are meant to open, no matter how rusty the hinges are." The wind rustled the trees outside. Amanda sipped her tea. "I don't hate Leonard anymore," she said quietly. Riley blinked. "You don't?" "I used to. But then I realized he's still trapped in his own mind, in his choices. That's a prison worse than anything I went through." The silence that followed was not heavy. It was full, like the calm after a long, cleansing rain. Amanda had found peace, not the kind that forgets, but the kind that forgives without surrender, that remembers without reliving, that transforms pain into purpose. The world hadn't changed, but she had, and now she was the change, the voice, the refuge for those still searching for their first step out of the dark. That was her legacy. That was her quiet revolution. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to smash that thumbs up and hit subscribe for more unforgettable, emotional, and viral true stories. We want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell us, where in the world are you watching from?